What if the wealth you seek is not hiding in effort, hustle, or strategy, but in the quietest moment of your day, the moment just before you drift into sleep? Neville Goddard called it the sacred doorway, the final thought you allow before surrendering to unconsciousness. That single thought, that final emotional imprint, becomes the seed from which tomorrow silently grows. And yet most people hand that moment over to worry, to doubt, to anxious calculations, to the mental replay of unpaid bills, missed opportunities, or the illusion that they are still behind. You're not wrong for doing this. No one taught you how powerful this moment truly is. But now, you're here, and that tells me your soul is ready to remember. During the day, your conscious mind runs the show, busy, skeptical, often afraid. But as you lie down at night, something opens. Bruce Lipton, biologist and thinker of the invisible world, reminds us that in sleep your brain shifts frequency, your defenses soften, and your subconscious, the real architect of your reality, becomes receptive like fertile soil waiting for instruction. It doesn't argue, it doesn't analyze. It accepts whatever emotional truth you offer it. That's why sleep is not just rest. It's reprogramming. Think about the last time you fell asleep replaying everything that went wrong, or planning how to fix your life tomorrow, or doubting if this manifestation journey even works for you. That wasn't neutral. That was creation. Every night, your subconscious listens. Every word you repeat, every feeling you nurture, becomes a script that runs quietly while you dream. And if that script is full of lack, fear, or waiting, you wake up into the same life you're trying to escape. But here's the sacred reversal. If you offer it a new story, one of certainty, abundance, and deep inner wealth, the world you wake into begins to reshape itself. Because you're not just hoping anymore, you're assuming. And assumption, as Neville taught, is the bridge between imagination and fact. This teaching you're about to receive is not about sleep. It's about sovereignty, about reclaiming the final minutes of your day and using them to plant new blueprints into the field of infinite possibility. This isn't wishful thinking. It's the science of the subconscious and the spirituality of self-creation, merged into a nightly ritual of power. Tonight, you're not just going to sleep. You're going to rehearse wealth. Speak it, feel it, install it, until your subconscious no longer remembers poverty as your identity, until your body begins to respond to money as something familiar, until your energy field whispers, "I already have it," and reality answers, "So be it." The mind may forget, but the subconscious remembers. And now, it's time to give it something new to remember. Let's begin. Most people treat sleep like an off switch, a break from the chaos, a pause in their pursuit of something better. But to those who understand the invisible laws, sleep is not pause. It is participation. It is creation in silence. It is where your inner world rewrites the script of your outer life. Neville Goddard called sleep the great workshop of creation because he knew something most never stop to consider. Your external circumstances are not born from the hours you spend awake. They're born from the states you repeatedly fall asleep in. You might think you're stuck because of what you're doing during the day, but in truth, it's who you're being while the world sleeps. You may go to bed exhausted, burdened, financially anxious, yet that's exactly the feeling state your subconscious accepts as your command. It doesn't matter what you want. It matters what you fall asleep believing is real. This is the hour of influence that most abandon. The forgotten 8 hours where reality is sculpted, not with effort, but with assumption. What if instead of replaying your fears and unfinished business at night, you ended the day rehearsing your wealthy self, not as fantasy, but as fact? What if the last thought before surrendering to sleep was one of ease, confidence, and inner richness? What if you imagined yourself already free, already funded, already fulfilled? You wouldn't need to beg the universe during the day because your nights would already be commanding it. It's not about pretending. It's about deciding. Deciding that you're no longer falling asleep as the version of you who lacks. You're closing your eyes as the one who already has. That single shift, repeated night after night, changes the architecture of your life. Because when the mind lets go, the soul steps in. And the soul does not beg. It creates. So tonight, when the day is done and the room grows quiet, ask yourself gently, who am I handing over to my subconscious? The self I no longer want to be, or the self I've finally chosen to become? The world you wake into tomorrow will reflect the answer. There's a silent transaction happening every night. one most never realize they're making. As your head rests on the pillow, your thoughts begin to drift, and in that drift, your emotional frequency is recorded, not by some external force but by your own subconscious, which doesn't sleep when you do. It listens, it accepts, it remembers, and what you offer it, especially in those fragile moments before sleep, becomes the blueprint for tomorrow. Think of the nights you've spent replaying what went wrong, the bills that haven't been paid, the emails unanswered, the subtle fears you try to suppress during the day but that come rushing in when the lights go out. You're not just thinking, you're programming. The hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for storing emotional memory, is especially active during sleep, particularly in REM cycles. So what you emotionally rehearse before bed doesn't just echo through the night. It takes root. And the cost? It's not always obvious the next day, but it shows up in patterns, a hesitancy to spend, an undercurrent of lack, an emotional default setting that says, be careful, there isn't enough. The worry you entertained becomes the vibration you live in, and that vibration is not neutral, it's magnetic. It keeps calling more of itself. This is why Neville insisted that your inner conversations matter, that the story you fall asleep to becomes the one you wake up in. If you close your eyes with a feeling of lack, the universe doesn't correct you, it agrees with you, because the universe responds not to language, but to belief. And your strongest beliefs are the ones repeated nightly in the quiet chambers of your mind. So if wealth is what you desire, worry is what you can no longer afford, because every night spent rehearsing fear is a night spent funding a future you don't want. But the reverse is also true. Every night spent rehearsing abundance, without evidence, without proof, but with feeling, plants seeds that cannot help but grow. Your subconscious doesn't care if what you feed it is true or false. It only cares if it's repeated. So repeat wealth, whisper certainty, and fall asleep not as someone chasing freedom, but as someone who already holds it. That shift may seem invisible, but over time, it becomes undeniable. There is a moment, soft, sacred, and often ignored, that arrives just before sleep pulls you under. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it holds more power than any goal-setting session, vision board, or financial strategy. In this moment, you are neither fully awake nor fully asleep. You are open, receptive, imprinting. And what you say to yourself in this tender space becomes more than words. It becomes command. Neville Goddard knew this well. He taught that repetition with feeling in the drowsy state just before sleep was the key to impressing the subconscious. Because it's not repetition alone that transforms. It's repetition fused with belief, carried on emotion, whispered in the stillness when the conscious gate is down. That's when the seed is planted. That's when reality begins to bend. There is a sentence, simple and profound, that carries within it the entire frequency of abundance. I am wealthy now. It is done. These are not just affirmations. They are declarations, vibrational signatures. They don't ask, they claim. And when spoken in the drowsy state, not with force but with quiet certainty, they bypass resistance and enter the soil of your being like a planted seed, set to bloom. Imagine your subconscious like a computer, always running background programs. Throughout the day it absorbs data, but at night during that final impression it saves the file. Save as true, it says, and then it runs that truth, on repeat, beneath your awareness. If you end the day with fear, it saves fear. If you end it with lack, it saves lack. But if you end it with wealth, genuine, embodied, felt wealth, it saves that too. And the next day it begins to build a world to match. Not all affirmations penetrate. Many bounce off the surface because they're said in stress, in doubt, in desperation. But the one you whisper just before surrendering to sleep, that's the one the subconscious accepts as real. Not because it's shouted, but because it's surrendered. Because it's felt as if already true. So tonight, let the last sentence you hear be the one your future self would speak. Let it be soft. Let it be sure. Let it be yours. I am wealthy now. It is done. Then drift. And let the silence carry it deeper than thought ever could. There is a doorway between worlds. A threshold not made of brick or belief, but of brainwaves and surrender. Neville Goddard called it the state akin to sleep. And it is one of the most overlooked portals to manifestation. You've passed through it countless times without knowing. That drifting space where you're not fully here, yet not quite gone, where thoughts no longer race but float, where the mind loosens and the heart whispers a little louder. This is the moment when imagination is most powerful, not because you're trying, but because you've stopped trying. Your critical mind begins to dissolve, and what remains is pure receptivity. This is where the subconscious opens its hands and says, "Show me who we are." And whatever image you offer, whatever scene you play, whatever feeling you allow, becomes instruction, not suggestion, instruction. Neville taught that this borderland is where creation happens most efficiently, not through force, but through feeling, not by shouting affirmations, but by gently inhabiting the end state, not later, now. You don't imagine that you will be wealthy, you feel that you already are. You don't watch yourself becoming, you embody yourself having already become. In this drowsy state, the imagination is no longer fantasy, it becomes blueprint. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is vividly felt. So if you offer it an experience of wealth, not as a hope but as a now, it receives it as truth. And once it accepts a truth, the world has no choice but to rearrange itself around it. Picture yourself at the end of a day, eyes heavy, body soft, drifting. And in that softness, you're no longer in your bed, you're in your dream home. You're looking at your bank balance and feeling calm. You're handing someone a generous gift, not out of obligation, but overflow. You're moving through a life that already belongs to you, not someday, but now. This is not fantasy. This is identity rehearsal. And when done in that sacred borderland, it becomes instruction to the deepest layers of your being. It is how the new version of you begins to root itself, not just in thought, but in vibration. So remember this, the drowsy state is not a place you visit, it's a place you plant. And the scene you plant there becomes the seed of your tomorrow. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped resisting it and let it be real. Before we move on, pause for a moment. If this message is reaching you, if you feel something shifting as you listen, it's not random. It means your subconscious is listening too, and there's something waiting for you in the pinned comment that speaks directly to this version of you, the one who's ready to stop rehearsing lack and start living as if it's already done. Check it when you're ready. Sometimes, the smallest decision opens the quietest door. Now, let's continue. Beware of background noise programming. Not all silence is empty, and not all sound is harmless. Every night as you fall asleep, the world continues to whisper. The television left on, the scrolling words of the last article you read, the conversation that lingers in your mind, the subtle vibration of fear in the background music of the news. These fragments may seem forgettable, but your subconscious never forgets. While you sleep, it listens, it absorbs, it shapes, it creates. We tend to think that the conscious mind is the creator, but the subconscious is the builder, and the builder follows the blueprint it's given, especially when the conscious guard is down. That's why the hours before and during sleep are sacred. They are not just recovery periods, they are programming portals. Every word, every image, every vibration absorbed during that window enters your inner world not as suggestion, but as permission. When you fall asleep to negativity, stories of conflict, scarcity, betrayal, you unknowingly rehearse those frequencies. Your subconscious interprets them as relevant. It doesn't ask whether it's fiction, news, or memory. It simply takes the input and aligns your internal state accordingly. It begins to believe, this is what matters, this is what we are preparing for. And from that belief, your reality takes shape. But the opposite is also true. When you replace the background noise with conscious intention, with affirmations of wealth, soundscapes of peace, or even silence charged with gratitude, you begin to feed the subconscious with new instructions. Not instructions for survival, but for expansion. Not defense, but abundance. This is not about control. It's about care, about understanding that the mind is always absorbing, always imprinting, always building, whether you're aware of it or not. And in sleep, that building accelerates. Because there is no filter, no judgment, only acceptance. So let the sound you fall asleep to be one that speaks to your future, not your fear. Let the energy surrounding you be chosen, not defaulted, because the atmosphere you rest in becomes the environment your subconscious uses to plant tomorrow's garden. If you fall asleep in a storm of noise, Do not be surprised when the next day feels like chaos. But if you sleep in a field of chosen frequency, you begin to rise into a life that reflects it. Your environment is not just what you see, it's what you hear, what you allow. And what you allow, especially at night, is what you become. Beneath your thoughts, beneath your stories, beneath even your emotions, there is rhythm, a frequency, a field of waves moving through your brain that shape how open or closed you are to suggestion, imagination, and transformation. Most never consider this invisible architecture, but it is there, orchestrating your inner receptivity like a silent conductor. And just before sleep, it changes everything. As your body begins to relax and your mind softens, your brain moves into slower wave patterns, particularly theta. Theta is the gateway. It is the state between wakefulness and sleep, between thinking and knowing, between effort and receiving. Children live in theta often, which is why they absorb everything without questioning it. Their subconscious is wide open. And in that same way, when you approach the edge of sleep, your adult brain returns to this childlike openness. But now, you are the one choosing what to place inside. Bruce Lipton speaks of this with scientific clarity. The subconscious does not resist in theta. It accepts, it records, it rewires. And this is why Neville was so insistent about imagining at the border of sleep. Because in theta, you are no longer a thinker. You are a transmitter. What you feel becomes frequency, and frequency becomes instruction. If you enter sleep from a place of fear, stress, or lack, theta doesn't protect you. It transmits it. It sends the message, "This is who I am." And that message begins to sculpt your behavior, your energy, your choices, even your body. But when you use this window to feel abundance, to dwell in gratitude, to imagine a scene of financial ease, you are not just dreaming. You are calibrating, resetting, sending new instructions into your energetic field. The mistake is thinking this moment is passive. It's not. It's creative silence. A silence that speaks louder than thought. A silence that teaches the body what the mind cannot yet believe. And from this state, miracles seem to emerge. But they're not miracles. They are responses to a new signal. And the signal is you. Miss this window and you keep replaying the old signal, the one shaped by survival, doubt, and limitation. But enter it consciously, and you step into the quantum lab where your future is rehearsed in whispers, not noise. You don't need to force your way into wealth. You need to feel your way into the brain state where wealth becomes natural. And theta is not out of reach. It arrives every night. The question is, what are you doing with it? What story are you letting it carry? Because once it does, it doesn't forget. It builds, and the world begins to echo what you whispered at the edge of sleep. There is a heaviness that settles in many hearts at night, the weight of unpaid bills, the echo of financial obligations waiting in silence. The mind begins to calculate, to compare, to fear, and so often people drift into sleep carrying these numbers like stones on their chest. But what is rarely understood is that this ritual of worry is itself a form of programming. You are instructing your subconscious to multiply lack, to repeat scarcity, to make tomorrow a mirror of today. Neville Goddard reminded us that imagination creates reality. What you accept before sleep is the seed of your waking world. If you fall asleep rehearsing anxiety, that anxiety is rehearsed again in the theater of your subconscious, and then staged in your outer life. The bill is no longer just paper. It becomes identity. It whispers, "You are behind. You are bound." And when that identity is carried into sleep, it does not dissolve. It strengthens. But there is a reversal, a higher choice, that changes everything. What if the bill is not a symbol of debt but of circulation? What if it is proof that energy has moved through you and can return multiplied? Instead of seeing it as evidence of lack, see it as evidence of flow. As though every payment is a seed planted, destined to return as harvest. This is not denial. It is redefinition. It is taking the image that once represented fear and transforming it into wealth's messenger. As you close your eyes at night, the ritual becomes simple. Instead of counting what is missing, you feel what is returning. Instead of shrinking from the image of the bill, you expand into gratitude for the circulation it represents. In that moment, you stop being a victim of numbers and become the author of meaning. And meaning, when impressed upon the subconscious, becomes reality. Science confirms what mystics have always known. The subconscious does not distinguish between imagination and fact. It only responds to repetition, to feeling, to the symbols you saturate it with. So when you turn fear into faith, lack into circulation, the very same bill that once chained you begins to free you. Because it no longer programs poverty, it programs abundance. Let every night be a rewriting. Let every fear be inverted before sleep carries it deeper. And soon, your outer world will begin to echo a truth you already rehearsed. That wealth is not something you chase, but something you are. That even in the face of obligation, you are free. That money does not define you. It responds to you. And when you fall asleep knowing this, you awaken into a world that knows it too. There is a kind of restlessness that no mattress can soothe. The tossing, the turning, the racing questions that rise up when the body longs for silence. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail again? What if I never escape this pattern? These are not harmless whispers. They are seeds. And when carried into sleep, they take root in the deepest soil of the subconscious. Doubt, when rehearsed at night, becomes the silent saboteur of wealth. Neville Goddard was unwavering in his teaching. Persist in the assumption and it will harden into fact. Persistence is not about straining. It is about refusing to let doubt rewrite the script you've chosen. Yet for many, the night becomes the battleground where new assumptions are challenged by old fears. The mind begins to debate, to adjust, to weaken the vivid scene of abundance already planted. And in that weakening, the subconscious receives a fractured message. Perhaps it's real, perhaps it's not. But the subconscious does not thrive in confusion. It thrives in clarity. Imagine a builder who receives a new blueprint each night. One night a mansion, the next a shack, then a palace, then a ruin. What could he build with instructions that constantly change? This is what doubt does. It interrupts construction. It leaves the house of your wealth unfinished. And so you awaken each day in the same half-built life, wondering why nothing feels complete. But clarity does not require struggle. It requires surrender. One vivid scene, held with feeling, carried into sleep without adjustment, impresses more powerfully than 1,000 scattered images debated in fear. The subconscious does not need variety. It needs constancy. It needs a single truth rehearsed with quiet conviction until it accepts it as fact. When doubt rises in the night, the answer is not to argue with it. The answer is to return to the scene, to let one image, one state, one feeling carry you into rest. Because when you do, doubt loses its grip. It dissolves, not through force, but through neglect. And what remains is faith, not as a concept, but as an atmosphere. Wealth is not born from perfect thoughts. It is born from persistence in assumption. Each night is an invitation to rehearse one reality, not two. To fall asleep in a scene so clear, so consistent, that the subconscious can no longer tell the difference between dream and fact. And when that happens, the world outside begins to reflect the certainty within. Doubt cannot sabotage what has already been accepted as real. There is a quiet power in repetition, not the repetition of empty words, but the repetition of identity rehearsed night after night until it becomes undeniable. One person once shared how they had been circling the same struggles for years, working long hours, feeling unseen, living as though wealth was always almost there, but never fully arriving. They read books, they practiced affirmations, but something shifted only when they discovered the secret of sleep. Instead of falling asleep in fear, they began to saturate their nights with prosperity, not by forcing belief, but by gently dwelling in it. They listened to affirmations while their bodies softened, not as demands but as truths whispered to the heart. They imagined arriving at work not with dread, but with pride. They rehearsed the feeling of receiving recognition, of hearing words of appreciation, of seeing their paycheck expand. Night after night, these images became more familiar than the struggle they once carried. At first, nothing seemed to change on the outside, but inside, something new was being built. The subconscious, hearing the same story every evening, began to accept it. And then the outer world started to catch up. Within weeks, opportunities arose that had never appeared before. They were offered a promotion that felt effortless. New income streams began to flow. The same workplace that once felt heavy became a place of growth. What had changed? Not the circumstances first. The state, the assumption, the inner script rehearsed while the body slept. This is the quiet miracle of night programming. It does not shout. It does not announce itself. It rewrites reality from the inside out, one dream state at a time. Because the subconscious does not resist what is repeated, it builds upon it. And when it is fed wealth, it begins to construct a life of wealth even when the surface seems still. The story is not rare. It is available to anyone who is willing to hand their subconscious a new identity at the edge of sleep. To stop rehearsing yesterday's lack and begin rehearsing tomorrow's certainty. Not once, not occasionally, but until the subconscious forgets the old story completely, until the world itself has no choice but to echo the new one. And when you witness it, it does not feel like chance. It feels like recognition, as if life is finally catching up to what you always knew was true. Wealth was never waiting to arrive. It was waiting to be assumed. There is a moment, just before the body surrenders to sleep, when the heart is listening more than the mind. The day has loosened its grip. The noise has faded. And in that silence, what you feel becomes far more important than what you think. This is the moment to seal your reality, not with effort, but with gratitude. Neville Goddard taught that gratitude is not a response to something already received. It is the evidence of belief in the unseen. To give thanks before the manifestation appears is to declare, "It is already mine." It is not asking, it is confirmation. And the subconscious, always listening, does not require evidence. It requires emotion. When you fall asleep whispering thanks, not for what might come, but for what already is, you are stamping your assumption into the deepest layers of identity. Gratitude, when felt in the body, alters the chemistry of the brain. It lowers resistance. It opens the heart. It moves you out of separation and into alignment. And when you drift into sleep in this state, the subconscious doesn't question it. It accepts it. It says, "This is who we are now." And from that point forward, your reality begins to organize around that truth. This is not a ritual of repetition. It is a ritual of recognition. Not mechanical words, but felt certainty. A quiet thank you whispered into the dark. A thank you that belongs to the version of you who no longer waits, who no longer needs proof, who knows that the act of gratitude is the final signature on the energetic contract of manifestation. So as the night draws in and your body begins to let go, feel the wealth as if it has already arrived. Let your final breath of the day be one of thanks, not because you are trying to manifest, but because you already have. Let the words be soft. Let them be sincere. And then, let go. Let sleep carry them where logic cannot go, into the field of creation, into the heart of your subconscious, into the dimension where wealth is not a goal but a mirror. You do not need to ask again. You only need to thank. And in that thankfulness, you claim your place. Not someday, tonight. Because gratitude is not the end of manifestation. It is the seal that tells the universe, it is already done. Your wealth is written in the last thought of the day. Every night, without exception, you hand your subconscious a blueprint, not with effort, but with emotion. Not with logic, but with vibration. Neville Goddard understood this as a sacred law. The final impression before sleep becomes the seed of tomorrow. Sleep is not rest, it is creation. And this creation doesn't begin when dreams arrive. It begins the moment you surrender the day. The last thought, the final emotion, the story you choose to fall asleep with. This is what your subconscious accepts as instruction. Whether it's fear or faith, lack or wealth, worry or gratitude, your biology absorbs it. As Bruce Lipton explains, your brain becomes most receptive when conscious defenses fade. What enters then doesn't just influence your mind, it rewires your identity. This is why doubt before sleep is expensive, and why gratitude before sleep is generative. One state drains, the other creates. The difference is subtle but powerful. Fear asks, what if it never comes? Gratitude whispers, it's already here. You don't need to wait for perfect circumstances. You need only 7 nights of consistency. 7 nights of assuming your wealth is real. 7 nights of letting your breath slow, your mind quiet, and your heart thank the universe, not as a wish, but as a knowing. Thank you. It is done. Let your sleep become sacred. Let your final thought be clear. Let your imagination speak louder than your fears. Because the world you wake into is not random. It's a reflection of what you rehearsed in silence. You are not falling asleep as the version of you who hopes. You are falling asleep as the version of you who knows. And when that knowing becomes a habit, wealth is no longer something you manifest. It's something you remember. Plant it, feel it, sleep with it. The soil is ready.